Hello? Hello? In my community, the black community, it's common knowledge that if you're a black man, you've got a better chance of being locked up with a bail you can't pay than anybody else. It begins in pretrial. It begins with who gets arrested. Black and white people smoke marijuana at equal rates, but 75% arrested are black. According to Pew Research Center, African Americans are less than 13% of the 13% of the US population, but 33% of the prison population. My father, an independent insurance broker, started out selling auto and life insurance. Then one day was introduced to the lucrative, fast, money-making business of bail bonding. And H&H bail bonds began with the motto, everybody wants to be free. With a team of men and women at the ready to take calls from dispatch, they headed off to work, setting people free and making money. I was expected to learn all parts of the family business. Moonlighting from my day job as an elected official, I worked the night shift, answering calls from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Hello, thanks for calling H&H Bail Bonds, where everybody wants to be free. How may I help you? Was the welcome that greeted an anxious caller looking to get their loved one out of jail. The first call was often price shopping for the lowest price. The law was clear. Cash bails start at 10% of the bond. But that didn't stop the competition from breaking the law and accepting less. You see, bail bond businesses are pseudo-philanthropists, counted on to support Little League teams, neighborhood celebrations, and buying Girl Scout cookies. Yeah, they're contributors. We know the business they're in. But do the people who benefit from their generosity make the connection that this is profit-driven marketing? As a CPA, I understood collateral and forfeiture. Families I sat with during that emotionally charged moment of the bond process may not have absorbed what they stood to gain and lose. Their bottom line, I just got to get him out of jail. I'd carefully explain how bail works. If he doesn't show up for court and can't be found, then you're not on the hook for $5,000. You're on the hook for $50,000. I'd carefully go through what that meant, explaining everything. If he doesn't show up and you're on the hook, by signing these papers, you're giving permission for your home to be used as collateral. And if you don't have the money, they may sell your home for the balance. Forfeiture. Yeah. And they look at me and say whatever they needed to move the process forward to gain freedom. Yeah. Are you aware of how many people sign over their homes to get a loved one out of jail and then lose their greatest asset? Our system disproportionately affects families, innocent families, and by extension, entire communities of black, brown, and poor people. I live in a world, two worlds that rarely coexist. Elected public official by day and bail bondswoman by night. It's an interesting construct for a time. Yeah. That process can be gut-wrenching when you think about how it emanates and how it begins. Going through this process, as a local elected official, I represented all the people. And it was in that role that I found my voice to speak truth to power. So here it is. The ignorance of unconscious biases impedes our progress towards a social justice system that's more fair and inclusive of everyone. The underlying issue is white privilege that influences the systematic racial oppression that impacts the historical inequalities that permeate our daily lives. Now, I know many of you work diligently, care deeply about your efforts to reform our criminal justice system. But do you know that the deck is stacked against brown, black, and poor people for centuries, is still dealing out injustice? Now, just wait before you cross your arms against your chest and check out, just listen to how this plays out unconsciously. As a graduating senior from college, interviewing for a job is a big deal. In my day, it began with your resume, your calling card. It began with the name, Helen Holton. No indicator of being black. Graduating from a PWI, a predominantly white institution. No indicator of being black. The phone interview, strong command of the King's English. No indicator of being black. I get the interview. I arrive early. When it's my turn, I rise to approach. The white interviewer is startled. Unconscious bias revealed. It's just that simple. But the truth of the matter is that a system constructed on white supremacy cannot work today. There has to be a change. Something's got to give. In the news today, race, class, and gender in our nation are more obviously seen than they have been since the 60s. The seat of global power at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. From there to the slums of our cities and rural communities, the division is openly lived and felt. How do we move beyond that? What makes this level of stratification so enticing to continue to pit an advantaged group over another? We are the change we've been waiting for, but do we know it? Do we know what that looks like? Probably not. But what I'll share with you is this. Each and every one of us has an opportunity to make a change in what's happening in our reality. It begins with an individual awakening. That's the essential paradigm shift that we need to begin a movement to change our system, to cause us to think about What's really captivating us, keeping us in the cages of our minds? You know, my aunt used to say to me all the time, we are all prisoners locked up in the psyches of our own minds. What is it going to take for you to move beyond the current reality that we're living in? What will you do to change your role to make a difference? To unlock the shackles that keep you bound in a system that's just not working. You see, everybody wants to be free. What will you do to contribute to that freedom? We've got to change the thinking of our minds in order to truly be free, to move us from where we are to a system that grants treatment for all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Helen. All right, what questions do we have for Helen, or thoughts or things? Yeah, Mai.
So how did you reconcile the fact that you were bail bondswoman and somebody who was working for the public good while you were holding those two roles? And what was your awakening moment that said, I can't continue to do this? I served on the Baltimore City Council for 21 years. It was maybe halfway through that my father took his commercial insurance business and saw the opportunities in bail bonding and decided he wanted to go that route. The morning I walked into the office of H&H Bail Bonds before going to City Hall to do the people's work, I walked in the office and was greeted by a big black shiny gun sitting on his desk unattended. Not a reality that I was accustomed to. But there's a whole world out there that many of us in this room, and before you began this work, did you understand what that meant? Knowing that the night before, he'd been out with some bounty hunters, chasing skips. The very thought of grown-ups playing, going out in the middle of the night, playing cops and robbers with real guns, and the authority to detain was cinematic at best. But it's a reality that you got to have a strong constitution, but you got to go deeper to understand what creates that situation. People do all sorts of things for the love of money that call into question their judgment. Sometimes it's a gut check. Sometimes it's the reality of, what am I doing here? I knew I didn't have it, and I got out. My father stayed in the business until he retired. It's not pretty. But that's why I'm here today. That's why I work with good Judge Jordan in Harris County and other county officials across the country to help them understand a system that we have been led to believe for our greater good and personal safety is not working in a plurality constructed on white supremacy. Doesn't meet the needs of what we need to do. Does that answer your question?
Other questions? Other things that this stirred up for you? Say that again? Okay, so increase some empathy towards a bail bondsman.
Well, empathy, but be clear, they make millions of dollars on the backs of black, brown, and poor people. It's $1 billion industry for insurance companies. And if we aren't the ones to jump in and arrest this situation and stop it now, it will continue to go on, and we'll be scratching our heads wondering, why isn't change happening? An individual awakening awakening is what we need. A paradigm shift won't come about without individuals understanding their role to step out of their comfort zone, to speak truth to power, to say what might be difficult to stomach, and to do something.
We've got time for one more question if anybody has something that they would like to ask or say. Mai? Yeah.
Money, cash money, drives all kinds of people to do things of questionable judgment. But the reality are the underlying issues of white privilege and white supremacy that constructed a system that targets, bail bondsmen, yeah, they do great things in community, but they also support the continuation and perpetuation of greed, oppression, and mass incarceration. It's a vicious cycle. It's the money that fuels them to turn a blind eye, but what happens when it's their family member? All of a sudden, it's not as abstract. And so for those of us who work in this system, we must be the voices of reason, of justice, of equity, of inclusion, to say there's a better way to do this. The fact that you don't have money when you're locked up for a minor crime, you've not been convicted. Why should you be left in jail? Because you don't have $500? It's a system that won't change if we're just pleasant and nice about it.
Thank you so much, Helen. We really appreciate